The following is a Bhagavad Gita class, Chapter 12, Texts 1 and 2, given by H.D.Goswami on February 13th, 1988, in Vrindavan, India.
Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yukta Ye Bhakta Tvam Paryupasate Ye Cha Api Aksharam Abhyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittama Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yukta Je Bhaktas Twang Paryupasate Je Chapyaksharam Abhyaktam Deshanke Yoga Vittama Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yukta Je Bhaktas Twam Paryupasate Je Chapyaksharam Abhyaktam Deshanke Yoga Vittama 12th chapter, text 1. So please repeat. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. Purport. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalist can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself, not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the absolute truth, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct, and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body. He is a spiritual spark, and the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the 7th chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole, and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again in the 8th chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the 6th chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the Absolute Truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and does not manifest. And so, factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he's clarifying his own position, because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best, because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question, asked of Krishna by Arjuna, will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Om Jnana Timiran Dasya Jnanam Jana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave. So I'll read the next verse also, which has a short purport, and then we'll discuss both of them. Next verse is Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Veshit Maya Veshamano Jemang Nitya Yukta Upasate Sadhaya Parayopetas Te Me Yukta Tamamata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Purport. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities, because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna. Or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does, he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. So this verse begins with the word evam. The first verse of the 7th chapter begins with the word evam. Well, you don't need that here. So evam, of course, means thus. Prabhupada translates it thus. Lord Krishna, Arjuna begins by saying evam satata yuktaye. Thus, those who are always engaged. I'll write out the first line and explain something about it. Satata just means always. And yukta, and ye means those who. So, because Arjuna begins with the word evam, thus, we can be fairly confident that he's referring to what happened at the end of the previous chapter. Because he begins by saying thus. And actually, if you turn to the end of the 11th chapter, you'll find what he's talking about. Krishna, after showing his universal form, which very much disturbed Arjuna and bewildered him, finally, at Arjuna's request, Lord Krishna changed back to his personal form, which is his highest form. So then, it said that he showed his Somya Vapu. He changed back to his Somya Vapu. This is an interesting word. Somya, this is a word used when Krishna finally changed back to his personal form. Somya comes from the word soma, which means the moon, or also nectar. So the moon symbolizes serenity and a type of sublime beauty. So the word somya, coming from that, means that type of moon-like serenity and beauty and charm. So it's described that at the end of that chapter, Lord Krishna changed back to his somya vapu, or his a very sublime and personal form, with two hands. Anyway, then at the end, Lord Krishna, at the end of the 11th chapter, Lord Krishna began speaking very directly about devotional service to him. He had already shown the universal form. And then he said that now, this form you are seeing at me now, Naham Vedayana Tapasana Danina Cheja Shakyevam Vido Drashtum Dristavanati Manjita. You cannot see this form by Vedas, study, nor by tapasa, by austerity, nor by charity, nor by sacrifice. It is only, he says, bhaktya ananyayasha. You can only see my form by devotion. And devotion which is ananyaya. There's another interesting word which I'll explain, because this is a word which is used very often in the Gita and also in the Bhagavatam, which often we translate as unalloyed or pure. So I'll show you what the original word is, which is often used in our books. Ananya. The word anya, of course, means other, another. And in Sanskrit, letter A before a word makes it negative. But when a letter begins with A, then you add A-N to make the negative. So ananya means literally no other. In other words, devotion which has no other object. So Krishna says, bhaktya to ananyaya, by devotion which is ananya bhakti, devotion which has no other object. So often Prabhupada translates this unalloyed or pure. So this is a very common word in our books. Anyway, Lord Krishna says it is only by this ananya bhakti, by this devotion which has no other object, not a bodily gratification or philosophical speculation or acquiring mystic powers, karma, jnana, yoga, but simply serving the Lord out of love with no other ulterior motive. So by that kind of devotion one can know Him. And then he says, Bhaktya Gunandaya Shakya Angevam Vitavarjuna. I can thus be known. He uses the word evam. I can thus be known by that unalloyed devotional service, and Gyatum Drashtum Chatattvena Praveshtum Cha Parantapa. And thus, these are all Sanskrit infinitives. And thus it is possible to know me, to see me, in truth. Gyatum, these are all infinitives. I don't know to what extent I should get into this. I'll explain a little bit, because just like in English, to form the infinitive, you have the word to in front. Like, for example, to know or to see. So in Sanskrit, the infinitive is made by adding tum at the end of the word. So, for example, Krishna says, thus you are able to know me. So the root to know is gya, and then gyatum, to know me, and then drashtum, to see me. And then finally praveshtum, to intimately approach me, to actually enter into my abode. Praveshtum. So Lord Krishna says that by unalloyed devotion, you can do these three things. You are able, gyatum, to know me, drashtum, to see me, and praveshtum, to actually come directly to me, as I actually am. Now, then he concludes this chapter by saying, you all know that verse, Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto, think of me to become my devotee. It's a similar verse. He says, Mat Karma Krin, you always work for me, Mat Paramo, take me as the supreme, and Mad Bhakta, my devotee, Sanghavarjita, completely free of other attachments, Nirvaira, without any enemies in this world. In other words, just like, let us say, a chaste wife who's trying to assist her husband, if suddenly she gets into a fight with some other woman, they're rolling around on the ground, pulling each other's hair out, then the husband may say, well, wait a second, I thought you were supposed to be assisting me. So, that's the idea, that we should not have any enemies in this world. We should simply try to serve Krishna. We should not get involved in attachments. Krishna says, Sanghavarjita, don't be attached to anything, and don't be adverse or repulsed by anything, which has nothing to do with serving God. It's just, you don't like it. So he says, Nirvaira, Sarva Bhuteshu Jak Samamiti Pandava. One who's like that, he comes to me. He actually comes to me. So then, at the end of those statements, the 12th chapter begins, and Arjuna says, Evam. Then we get to this statement. Arjuna begins the 12th chapter by saying, oops, Evam satata jukta ye. Those who are always engaged like that. In other words, they're unalloyed devotees. They're always working for Krishna. They're thinking of Krishna. And they have no other interest but Krishna. So those evam who are engaged in that way, always, bhaktas tvam paripasate, your devotees who very nicely worship you, and ye chapi aksharam avyaktam, and those who worship the akshara and the avyakta, the eternal and manifested, beyond the senses. Tesham ke yoga vittama. So I'll explain that. I erased those. Anyway, then Arjun's question is, Tesham, of those people, of all of those people, K is a question in Sanskrit. Should I explain what is Sanskrit? All right. In Sanskrit, a lot of the... all right, I'll explain something. In Sanskrit, one way that things are often organized, sentences are often organized in Sanskrit, are with words that begin respectively with Y, T, and K. And, for example, you say yatha. Ta, this ending T-H-A, indicates the way something is done. So yatha, just as, and then tata, similarly, so in that way. You see you have yatha, tata, and then if you want to ask the question, in what way is it done, then that's katam. It's the same ta, but with ka at the end, and K is used for the question. Like in Spanish, we'll have K, como, and quien, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese language like that. So K, katam. Similarly, if you want to say, for example, those who, it would be ye, and then similarly they, those who, and then they would be te, and if you want to ask who, it would be ke. This is a plural masculine. Similarly, if you want to ask questions like of time, if you say when something happens, or beginning a sentence, then you use yada, when something happens. In other words, you're saying when this happens, then that happens. So Sanskrit sentences are often organized. What language are you translating to? Huh? So it's very often that you'll find Sanskrit sentences in the Gita are symmetrical. It'll first say just as this, so similarly. Like, for example, in the verse ye yatamam prapadyante tam sataiva vijami. As they approach me, so I reward them. In many, many Sanskrit senses, just like here, Arjuna saying, those who worship you this way, those who worship you that way, then K, which of those are better? So yada means when, and then you say when such and such happens, then that happens, then would be, at that time would be tada, and then the question when would be kada, like in the Shikshastra, kada tavanama grahaneva vishati. So these two here generally are used to organize sentences. When this happens, then that happens. Or just as in this case, so in that case. Yata tata is often used to introduce an analogy or metaphor. Just as this, so similarly that is like that. So you'll always find this one, like ye yata, as they approach me, tata, in that way I reward them. And the question is katam. And also, the same form is used in all the Sanskrit questions. For example, there's when, this is when and how, and similarly where would be yatra, again with the Y. In other words, where something happens, tatra, therein something, and the question where is kutra. So this is where, when, how, and then what else is there? Who? Who? Yes. That would just be, who could be K, like in this case. Who, that gets a little technical. Who has to be declined according to how many people there are, one, two, or many, whether it's masculine or feminine, and a lot of other things. But this is just a simple thing. So you'll find in the Bhagavatam or Gita, whenever there's analogies, they'll use yata, tata, or katam, and when this, then that. So anyway, so in this particular verse, Arjuna says, Te Shanga, them K, which ones are Yoga Vittama? I erase this now. So this word Yoga Vittama, Arjuna's question is, Te Sham, which means out of all of them. K, which ones are Yoga Vittama? This, of course, Yoga Vit just means knowers of yoga, and Tama. There's one word in Sanskrit, a neuter word, which is tamas, which means ignorance. But there's another word, which is simply tama, which can be declined in any way, and it simply means a superlative. It's exactly the same as the English S, like the prettiest, the nicest, the friendliest, and so on. So, of course, there are different ways to do that in Sanskrit, but one of the ways is by adding tama. There's other ways also. By adding, so Arjuna says, who are the best knowers of yoga? Who are the best knowers of yoga? And that's his question, literally. Which are most perfect? Who are the greatest knowers of yoga? And then Krishna's answer is, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Maya Vesha Manoje Mang Nityayukta Upasate, those who fix their minds in me, and Nityayukta, always engaged, Upasate, Shraddhaya Parayopetas Te Me Yukta Tamamata. So here in his answer, the word yukta is also very important. This is one of the most common words in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a root, a Sanskrit root, yuj, which means to connect or to link up. And out of this word, of course, comes the word yoga from this root. And then, just like, for example, in English, oftentimes you make words like explained or, anyway, in Sanskrit, by adding ta at the end, it becomes a past passive participle, like explain and explain. Or, what would be another example of an English word like that? English is so irregular and crazy, but anyway, it just becomes yukta. I won't go into all the Sanskrit grammar. So yukta simply means connected or linked up. Like linked. You have the word link and then you add ed in English. Link and linked. Or explain, explained. In English you add ed. So in Sanskrit you add ta. So yukta means simply linked or connected. Like connect and connected. So this is one of the main words in the Bhagavad Gita. If you study the Gita seriously, you'll find Krishna constantly uses this word. For example, just in this little exchange here with Arjuna, Arjuna's original question was that those were always yukta. Evam satata yukta je, and the Prabhupada translates yukta here as engaged. Then in Krishna's answer he says, those who engage their minds in me and who are nitya yukta. Arjuna said satata yukta, and Krishna says nitya yukta. It's the same thing. And again, Prabhupada translates yukta as engaged. But then, to show you how important this word is, when Krishna finally gives his answer, the question was, who are the yoga vittamas? Who are the greatest knowers of yoga? Who are the greatest knowers of yoga? When Krishna answers, he says the devotees were always engaged with faith. K, again, like I said, the Y-T-K. The question was K, which ones? And the answer is Te, those ones are may, for me, or by me, are considered yukta tama. Mata. Mata means they who are considered may by me yukta tama. Or again, the same tama, the same as here. This means a superlative degree. So they're the most yukta. Also, in the course in the 6th chapter, Krishna uses the same word. He says, Yogi nama pi sarveshang madgatinam taratmana chadhavan bhajate domam same yukta tamomata. There, of course, it's just the only difference is it's the singular. Sa is just the singular, he, and te means they. That's all. Same Yuktatamo, this is the verse at the end of the 6th chapter. Yuktatamo mataha. It's the same thing, it's just in the singular instead of the plural. So, again in the 6th chapter, Krishna also says Shraddhavan, one who has faith. And in this verse he says, Shraddhaya parayopetas, endowed with great faith. So, this word yukta is very important because obviously here yukta becomes a synonym of vit, of a knower. Because Arjuna asked, who is yoga vittama? And Krishna says, these people are yuktatama. So Krishna considers that the word yukta here is a synonym for vit, for yoga vit. A knower of yoga is yukta. So this is very important because it exemplifies how in Krishna consciousness philosophy the knowledge does not refer simply to some theoretical academic knowledge, but it actually means that one is engaged. And of course, the word yukta means connected, so in this case one's consciousness is connected. In other words, knowledge means that one has to be connected to the source of all knowledge, to Krishna. So, that was Krishna's answer, that those who are always engaged with devotion, they are yuktatama. They're the most connected. The idea is that to get knowledge, one has to be connected to God. And the more one is connected to God, the more one has knowledge. Just like the closer you get to the sun, the more heat and light there is. It's not a question of oneself becoming a great scholar, but rather the closer one comes to God, the more he has knowledge. And Krishna says the way to approach me is by devotion. So, anyway, it's a little technical, not so much. Is it too technical? Huh? Huh? So perhaps you have any questions on these things. I could answer any questions you have. Yes.
I have a question from this 53rd verse of 11th chapter.
Yes.
This word used here is actually Drishtvam. Drashtu Drishtvam Imam Yatha. This means the form which you saw, not the one which you are seeing.
Drishtavan, not Drishtva, Drishtavan.
Yeah, so Drishtvam means
As you have seen me.
Yeah, so that was the universal form. But Prabhupada
No.
seeing.
No, this is actually the perfect past tense, which indicates a completed action that you have seen. But Krishna says that just after showing his two-handed form. In fact, the proof of that is, if you turn to text 51, in the 11th chapter, Arjuna Vata Drishtvedam Manusham Rupam Tava Somyam Janardinam Idanim Asmi Sambritaha Sacheta Prakitim Gata. Hey all, that verse is very nice, I'll write that. You all don't have books? Does everyone have a book? The devotees? Alright. That's a very nice verse. Arjuna says, he says, Drishtva Manusham Rupam. This, of course, is the root. Drish means to see, and twa is a suffix meaning having seen. Huh? Oh, I left out the word idam. The idam just means this. Having seen this human-like form, or human form. Manusham. Drishtva idam manusham rupa. Tava somyam. Again, that word I already explained, somya. Here Arjuna uses Tava somyam janardana. Idanim means now, at this point. Asmi, I am. Sangvritaha, which Prabhupada translates settled. Sam means completely, or perfectly, or nicely, and vritaha means engaged or in a particular state of existence, functioning in a particular way. So in other words, I'm now functioning properly, literally. Samvritaha. Idanim asmi samvritaha sacheta, which means with my mind. In other words, I got my mind back. Or with my proper consciousness. Sacheta prakritim gataha. Now the word prakritim is used in Sanskrit exactly as in English, both to mean nature, in the sense of physical nature, birds and bees and trees and all that. But it also means in Sanskrit a person's nature. Like you say, like, that's my nature, that's the way I am. In Sanskrit, it's just like that. For example, Lord Krishna says what is it? Versajasing cheshtate swasya prakritim jnanavan api. That even a learned man acts according to his nature. Use the word prakriti. Then he says, Prakritim janti bhutani. Everyone follows their nature. Everyone follows their prakriti. So, nigraha kim karishti. What will repression accomplish? So here Arjuna says, gataha means I have now gone to. Gone is used often in Sanskrit idiomatically. It just means like to come to a certain point or to be in a certain state. So he says, in other words, prakritim gata, I've now gone to my nature. In other words, I've come back to my original nature. I'm all right now. I'm myself again. So, obviously, here Arjuna's talking about having seen the two-handed form of Krishna, as indicated by the word Somya and his Manushang Rupam. The universal form was not at all like that. He's talking about the two-handed form, as Prabhupada says. When Arjuna thus saw Krishna in his original form, he said, "O Janardana, seeing this human-like form so very beautiful, Somyam, I am now composed in mind, Sacheta, and I am restored to my original nature." So here also he uses the word Drishtva, which has the same indication of past tense of Drishtavan. It's just anyway, I won't go into all the technicalities. But so therefore, when Arjuna then says again, or when Krishna says that this form which Drishtavanasi you have seen, and Arjuna already said Drishtva, then the sense is that it's a two-handed form.
But argument can still be given because he also saw the universal form before that. Like in 57.
But that also, but also in the description of the universal form, Krishna often said that no one but you has seen it. So even if in that sense you take it like that, Prabhupada translates it in the sense I gave. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. And that's confirmed in the next verse, where you see this verse, Krishna says, Bhaktya Gunaniya Shakyam Evam Vido Arjuna. Shakyam Evam Vido Drashtum Drishtavan Mam Asimam Jita. Anyway, it's not such an important point. We can go into a lot of technical discussion, but it's clear that one is supposed to see the two-handed form of Krishna by devotion. There's no doubt about that.
One more question.
Yeah.
This also technical. In this verse, first verse, 12th chapter.
Yes.
Even though there are only two categories, Arjuna is asking who is better of these two. But
Yes.
the case used the superlative. Instead of yoga vittara, he said yoga vittara. So what is the difference?
In other words, because this is like the World Series. That's the idea. In other words, let me see. This is the final championship bout. Because all the other processes have already been discarded as inferior. So in other words, the greatest is going to be one of these two people. Do you understand? I guess in India, I'm talking in terms of cricket championship. Yes.
Can you please kindly show me your 400 form?
Yes.
Can you explain why you was shown the 200 form, or where in the Sanskrit that the verb is 200 converts to the 400?
Yes, it's in text 50. Sanjay Uvachi Arjunam Vasudeva Stutopva. Vasudeva, thus having spoken to Arjuna, Sakam Rupam Darsyamasa Bhuya, Asasyamasa Chavita Venam. And then, having reassured Arjuna, Bhuta, again he changed into his Somya form.
So, in other words, Somya here.
For one thing, a four-handed form is not human-like. There aren't many human beings walking around with 4 arms. So in that sentence, it explains that he showed that form, but then he again transformed into his Somya form.
What would be the reason why Arjuna would want to see that beforehand?
Well, he was seeing everything. He saw the universal form. In other words, the whole purpose of this chapter was to show all of Krishna's glories. The whole spirit of this chapter is that Arjuna wanted Krishna to show his glories, to establish that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Arjuna said, Kiritinam, in text 46, Kiritinam gadinam chakrahastam vichamitam dashtamaham jateva dinaiva rupena chaturabhujena sahasrabaho bhagavishamurte. That in text 46, he says, O universal form, O thousand-arm form, I wish to see you in your 4-armed form, with helmeted head and a club, wheel, conch, and lotus flower in your hands. I long to see you in that form. So, Arjuna doesn't say, please change back to the original form. He says, now we've seen the universal form, now let's see the 4-handed form. And then Krishna says, Maya prasanena tavarjunedam rupam param darashitam atma jogat tejo mayam vishnamanantadadyam janmeturanyena dadrashta purvam. So then Krishna shows him that form. And then it said he again assumes his sublime form. Plus, it's understood historically from the Mahabharata that Krishna was appeared as Krishna, as Govinda. There's no doubt about that. There's no question about. The very word Krishna indicates Krishna's 2-handed form. And throughout the Mahabharata, Krishna is appearing as Krishna, as himself. There's no mention anywhere in the Gita that, so to speak, the Gita, he suddenly assumes a different form. And Arjuna asked, please let me see that form. He says, Tenu, let me see that form. That 400 form, and then finally Krishna comes back to his regular form.
If it's not too technical, go back to that previous point about, I think verse 51 is, even if that's past tense of to see.
But it's not exactly. In Sanskrit, past tense is not always strictly past tense. For example, this word gataha, which means literally gone, but here it means I have now come to, in the English sense. So you learn a grammar book that it means, but then in actual usage, of course, it's. So just avanasi means I have seen. I have seen your human-like form.
And still, the next verse is again past tense, the same verb thing. So
Yeah, sudur darshan vidam rupam distavanasi janmama beva piyapsi rupasi nityam darshan kamsa.
so actually what's being said is that the form of mind which you previously saw is actually very different from mind. Not this Samya Bapu, but this one you saw previously. In other words, it could either refer to the universe.
No, Prabhupada says this form of mind you are now. So Prabhupada says, in the 48th verse of this chapter, Lord Krishna concluded revealing his universal form and informed Arjuna that this form is not possible to be seen by so many pious activities, sacrifice, etc. Now here the word Sudur Darshan is used, indicating that Krishna's 2-handed form is still more confidential. So Prabhupada very clearly explains that, so the word Drishtavanasi is not necessarily a strong, remote past tense, that form that you saw a few minutes ago. Meaning you have seen. In other words, you have achieved the vision of. You have now seen this. It's just like, for example, let us say I suddenly come and show you something. I say, this thing which you have now seen is, I don't mean something you saw 10 minutes ago. I show it to you, I say, all right, this that you've just seen, this that you've now seen, is such and such. That's what Krishna is doing.
So it seems perhaps there's some significance because I compared with a good half a dozen, if not more, other translations of Bhagavad Gita on this very point.
Because they think that this universal form is the highest form, that this is the conclusion. In fact, who was it? Was it Guru Kripa?
Yes.
You said we walked into a class, and in Hawaii, a Gita class, and the professor at the university just got through saying, the introductory remark, that we're only going to go up to the 11th chapter, because that's the end of the Gita, really. There's nothing, because in the 11th chapter, Krishna shows the highest form, and the rest of the Gita is not that important.
So the impersonators all take it to refer to the universal from this standpoint.
They don't really think about it. They're not really...
It is obvious to them, but they think it's obvious.
What?
They think it's obvious.
No, because when Arjuna sees this universal form, he becomes disturbed. When he sees the two-handed form of Krishna, then he says, now I'm restored to my real nature. Now I'm restored to my real nature. They think matter is greater than spirit. In other words, you can't interpret this chapter in a way which contradicts the rest of the Gita. The whole spirit of the Gita, Krishna says in the Gita, that all these, in the 10th chapter, he says that all these cosmic manifestations are insignificant. He says, Atava bahunaitena kingyatena Arjuna. Ekam stena, with just a small particle of myself, I maintain this whole universe. So therefore it's already been explained in the 10th chapter, because the 10th and 11th chapters are related. In the 10th chapter, Lord Krishna explains all his cosmic opulences, and then says that actually these things are insignificant. What is the use of it? Was just a small fragment of myself. I maintain all these things. Then in the 11th chapter, Arjuna says, well, I just heard about how you pervade this universe. Now let's see it. I want to see it in action. And that's how the universal form starts. Because Arjuna wants to see in action that form of Krishna, which is sustaining all the opulences mentioned in the 10th chapter. But Krishna said that's ekam shena, by a fragment of myself, that's all going on. You see, this whole question about this form we're talking about, Krishna says this form can only be known by unalloyed devotion. But there was no devotion in the universal form. Arjuna didn't feel devotion, he felt terror and anxiety, and he felt bewilderment. It's never stated that Arjuna felt devoted to that form. So again and again and again and again, Krishna says, you can only know me as I am by devotion. But there's no devotion associated with that universal form. Yes.
Krishna did mention that this form can only be seen by those who are devoted. Because you're my devotee, therefore I'm going to show you this universal form. And for you, no one has seen it. I understand, supposing the fact that you can only see it by devotion. Otherwise, you can't see it. Before you, no one has seen it.
Krishna said that because you are my devotee, therefore I'll allow you to see how I take care of the universe. But what was that universal form doing? It was simply devouring the universe. And when Arjuna finally asked, what is this form? Krishna said, Kalos me, I am time. So when the question finally came up, Arjuna directly said, Ko Bhavan, who are you? What is this form? And the answer was, I am time. And it's clearly explained throughout the Gita and the Bhagavad Gita that time is simply one of the expanded forms of Krishna. It's not that Kala is the supreme form of God. It's explained very clearly in all Vedic literature that Kala is simply a particular potency of the Lord which manifests and destroys these universes. So the question was directly raised, who is this form? What is this form? And Krishna said, Kalos me, I am time. So there's no question in the context of Vedic philosophy that time is not the supreme manifestation of God. It's simply a particular potency which destroys these worlds. And that's what that form was. So how can we say that's the supreme form? There's no logic behind it. Arjuna directly said, Ko Bhavan, who are you?
Is this universal form, which was supposed to be seen only by Arjuna, also the universal described, the universal form described in the second chapter of Bhagavad?
That's a form of meditation.
So it's not the same.
That description is more like the 10th chapter, a description for meditation.
So it's not pure adukta.
Yeah. In the 10th and 11th chapters, we see on the one hand, one can meditate in the different opulences of the universe as being part of God's body or being somehow God. In the 11th chapter, Krishna actually showed a spectacular demonstration of it, of how he actually pervades the universes and destroys them. Yeah. In the 10th and 11th chapters, we see on the one hand, one can meditate on the different opulences of the universe as being part of God's body or being somehow God. In the 11th chapter, Krishna actually showed a spectacular demonstration of this, of how he actually pervades the universes and destroys them.
Is that form illusory or does it have an eternal?
The universal form?
Yeah.
No.
This one.
It's manifest when the universe is manifest.
But then when it's manifested in one place for someone to see it, like one who just said it, manifested right there now.
Yes, it said again and again in that chapter, Ihaikastam Jagat Krishna. The entire universe is present at one time, at one point in space.
Excuse me, it was states that Dhritarashtra also saw this form.
Yes, Krishna showed him some of these things to try to
He
convince him.
mercifully showed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whom he showed mercifully, he can see.
Yeah.
Dhritarashtra and Sanjay both saw this form. But it's sitting far away, Hastinapur, not in Kurukshetra. So it is this mercy that matters.
Yeah.
The supremacy of the universal form does not be a way consistent, but the difference between the two-handed form and the four-handed form is really more discussion.
But there's no real problem there, because from the historical context, it's understood. Krishna means Krishna's two-handed form.
Yeah, but for example, this Bhagavad Gita passage where Krishna, it said that Krishna comes from Vishnu, or through Vishnu.
No. No, that's not.
That Krishna is one agent of Vishnu.
Not in the Bhagavad Gita.
But Bhagavad is also the second kind of with their white and black purple.
Yes.
Mahavishnu.
That's it. Well, Krishna also came out of the nose of Brahma. Brahma snorted once, and Krishna and Matsya came out. So maybe does that mean that Vishnu is simply a little thing that comes out of Brahma's nose?
It's mentioned in the 10th canto that Arjuna and Krishna are married land and they go.
Yes. But we just like, for example, Krishna is born as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Does that mean that he's just their son?
So for example, when Krishna is leaving the planet, he manifests to Uddhava meets him in the four-handed form. And this is body. It's not a situation. It's just his personal.
Therefore, Krishna can manifest his two or four-handed form. It's just like sometimes you may see your father with a tie on, sometimes you see him with a polo shirt or something, or just with a sports shirt on. What's the difference? Sometimes he dresses this way, sometimes he dresses that way. Krishna, even with the gopis, sometimes he showed four arms just to play a game with them. So it's not really a big problem. The fact that it's so interchangeable demonstrates how Narayan is actually part of Krishna. But that's not really a serious problem. Again, Krishna says Manushan Rupam, a human-like form. That indicates Govinda, Krishna, with two arms. Manusha means two-handed.
In the 9th chapter, he says, that I've taken shelter of this human.
No, if you look up the word asrita in the Sanskrit dictionary, it doesn't mean simply taking shelter. It means many other things also. Assumed, manifesting.
What happens? Assuming.
Yes, assumed.
Assuming this human life form.
Yeah, the demons think that I've assumed it. What verse is that? 9 what?
9:11. They say they deride me when I assume it. He says he assumed it.
When I descend in the human form, they do not know. Avajananti manudha manasindaramasritam param bhav majananto bhutanahesya. Anyway, it's a technicality of how it's translated and how the verse comes out. But the actual word asitam doesn't simply mean that you take shelter of something else outside of yourself. That's not
Well, even to assume implies the same, taking shelter of something which is not oneself.
to assume, well, I'm not convinced that Prabhupada is using these words here in the most technical sense. In other words, it's not that Prabhupada used different words. It's not, in fact, I think Prabhupada actually avoided being super technical, because this whole process of spiritual life could just degenerate into a type of silly academic, endless academic bickering. And so Prabhupada states very clearly what his point is. God has an eternal body. It's not that he assumes a body, but that he has an eternal body, and that if you think God's different from his body, you're a demon. I mean, it's very clear what Prabhupada's position is. The fact that he just threw out an English word here, in other words, you can't get so technical and think that you can change the other 10 million references in Prabhupada's books. So if you actually look up the word ashrita in the Sanskrit dictionary, it doesn't simply mean to take shelter of something outside yourself. It also means simply to be situated in something.
Because we can use this argument that, the word's not to insist on one word, but on the other hand, Prabhupada many times comes down and says this word proves, that this verse cannot be taken personally. And we come down on the word cha, and we'll make a whole case for how this, how this verse is applies to the personal form, personal presence in the world.
Yes, but it's Krishna that also says you can only know me through my pure devotees, through pure devotion. So Prabhupada does have the authority to say that. Prabhupada does have the authority to say it means this. According to Krishna, he has the authority because he has an unalloyed devotion for Krishna. And whereas, mundane academicians or so-called Sanskrit scholars do not have unalloyed devotion for Krishna, and therefore, according to the Gita itself, they do not know Krishna.
There's many pure devotees of Vishnu who claim that, who offer this verse as evidence that that Krishna was just a human-like form, but that Vishnu is the
No. They may offer pure devotees of Vishnu.
Well, I'm saying devotees, not academic.
No. Krishna says you have to be a pure devotee of me. Krishna is speaking. It's very clear that it's Krishna speaking. And Krishna says, those who surrender to me can know me. So if someone is worshipping Narayan, that's not a qualification for understanding Bhagavad Gita. What Krishna specifically says is, those who are pure devotees of me, Krishna. So to be a pure devotee of some other form or manifestation of God is not the qualifications of the Gita.
Then it would be easy for them to accuse you of distinguishing between Narayan and Krishna.
No, Krishna says here, those who have pure devotion for me can know me. So therefore, those who are pure devotees of Krishna can understand it. These arguments may go on. But Rupa Goswami has very brilliantly analyzed this. If you study all the transcendental qualities, you'll find that Krishna manifests so many spiritual opulences and relationships. How can you argue that? The Sakya Rasa, Madhurya Rasa, and Vatsalya Rasa. It's a very obvious point. That the worship of Narayan is mostly with awe and reverence. It's an obvious point that you can go beyond awe and reverence. I think Rupa Goswami's analysis of rasa in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is they're irrefutable for philosophical points. They're self-evident philosophical points. I don't see how anyone can argue with them. How can you say that simply formalistic, ritualistic worship with awe and reverence can compare to being a boyfriend of God or a girlfriend of God in terms of the degree of intimacy? These are obvious points. And so the nature of Krishna Lila, again, the word asritam, you often see it used in the sense of shelter, but it has other strong meanings also, which indicate the opposite.
I was discussing with Vaishnav in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, and he was arguing the fact that if I study as much the pastimes of the Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha, with his devotees, with Lakshmi devotees, his devotees, as much as I study or know about the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, I would also find out that they are extremely intimate and they're wonderful and sublime, and I would also be completely attracted
We are attracted to Vishnu. It's not that we are anti-Vishnu. You have to get this straight. We are devotees of Vishnu. Point is that we accept the authority of Lord Chaitanya. All these things we're stating have been explained by Lord Chaitanya.
That's the ultimate argument.
Huh?
Seems to me the ultimate argument is that Prabhupada being a pure devotee who just takes...
We accept the authority of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. He's explained all these things. And actually, if we study the Puranas and so on, of course, we worship Vishnu, we worship Narayana. It is Krishna. It's the same person. It's the same person. It's not that we're anti-Vishnu or anti-Narayana. It's the same person. It's the same person. But the fact is that we do not find pastimes like these, like the pastimes we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna Lila. These things are unique. Rupa Goswami has pointed this out, and it's a well-known fact. There are many Puranas and so on and so forth, but there's nothing that can compare with the pastimes of Krishna Vrindavan, with his devotees. When Krishna manifested in Dwarka Mathura, that was the Vishnu Shakti within himself. So we know how Krishna has pastimes with the Pandavas, and that is, in a sense, his pastimes with killing demons, which he did sometimes with the Pandavas. Prabhupada said it's an Narayan potency. So these pastimes in different places with different devotees or Yadu dynasty, it was in a sense like the Narayan potency. But there's nothing that can compare to the intimate pastimes. There's nothing. We do know about the pastimes of Narayan and Vishnu. We are attracted to them. They're in our books. They're in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's in the Krishna book. But nothing can compare to the pastimes of Vrindavan. And this was the point of Lord Chaitanya. You cannot find anything in any Vedic literature about any incarnation of Godhead which can compare to Krishna's union with the gopis. And that was Lord Chaitanya's point. There's nothing remotely resembling that. How Lord Krishna exchanged his pastimes with the gopis, how he performed his pastimes with his cowherd boyfriends. It said, Rupa Goswami has analyzed these things. Even the friendship of Arjuna with Krishna can't compare to the friendship of the cowherd boys in Vrindavan. Even if you take the Pandavas to be the exalted devotees of Narayana, or however you want to take it, nothing can compare to the feelings of the devotees in Vrindavan. The intensity of their love for Krishna, how they reacted to separation from Krishna. There's nothing like this. Everyone will say everything, but it is actually Lord Chaitanya's movement was the spreading love of God, which is engaged even when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even hundreds of years ago, what to speak of now, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to South India, he said there are so many rituals and formalities, but the spontaneous loving ecstasy, he didn't find there. Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah.
So should our ultimate argument be that because Lord Chaitanya is saying so, therefore, and we follow him, therefore this is...
That is our position. That is a statement of our position.
The other argument is that it's obvious, like you were mentioning, because it's obvious Krishna is the most revealed.
It is clear. It is clear.
It is not clear for those with whom we argue.
No, it depends also on the potency of the preacher and also the intelligence of the person that's hearing. If someone is simply defending his position, that's another thing. But as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, nothing can compare to the love of the gopis, and that's a fact. You cannot find anything in any literature like the feelings of the gopis. And they're the emblem of Vrindavan. The feelings of the gopis, the intensity of their love for Krishna, their feelings of separation, nothing. What do you have to compare to that?
Well, the thing is, I don't have because I don't know. What others may have studied concerning the elaborate pastimes of Lord Vishnu in like interlocutors. Could you relate to me one pastime of Lord Vishnu in like...
In the Bhagavatam, there's so many stories about Vishnu.
I know one which occurs at the gateway of the planet where Giant Vijay.
It's not that in Vaikuntha, no one knows Vishnu. It's just a very cold relationship. Of course, they're loving devotees. They're loving devotees, mostly in Dasya Rasa. Therefore, they're like his own children. There's a loving, affectionate relationship and different activities, and so they go with him here and there. Yes?
I want to make some comment about this because when we was in Parayatra in Pradesh, we find some groups and yes, life
and mostly of them they don't know Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they manifest some interest in know about this Chaitanya Charitamrita. And for this reason, maybe they act like that.
Of course. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave his conclusion. We don't have to be more intelligent than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gave his conclusion. He said what was the position of different communities, different Vaishnavas, and that should be taken as final. And so, if someone says Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is wrong, let him demonstrate. Not that our position is that we accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as authority. We are not against Vishnu Narayan or against any Vaishnava.
So we're doing that. We're saying that Lord Chaitanya is our authority.
Yes. So I think it's time for Artik now. The following is a darshan with Hridayananda Das Goswami and Indian students on February 29th, 1988 in Mayapur, India. Tutti italiani capiscono? Huh? Huh?
I translate.
Are there any questions? Yes.
We would like you to explain us on the material elements, starting from false ego to earth, the process of creation.
Yes. If you're going to translate, it's better to... I devoti italiani che hanno bisogno di traduzione... Va? If you don't mind, I'll begin from the bottom up. Paper flow. So, in modern terms, you could say that the first elements are solids, liquids, and fire, vapors or gases, and then space itself. Come. As Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhumirapo Analo Vayu come. These are the Pancha Mahabhutani. So, Bhumir, earth or solids, Apo, water, liquids. Bhumir Apo Analo, fire. Vayu, air in general, gases. And Kong. Now, according to the modern science is not so advanced. They're a little advanced, they have a little technology, that's all. But their overall understanding is not so good, deficient. So, they don't understand that space is actually an element. It is technically called in the Sankhya philosophy, Chidra Dhatritvam. It is Dhatritvam. It is the quality of giving. Dhatri. It is the giver of space, or the giver of facility to the other elements. Just like in order to keep this table here, there must be space for the table. If there's no space, how could you put the table? So space is actually an element. They don't understand this. Anyway, the elements are described simply. Solids, liquids, fire. Why? Why not a very elaborate technical explanation? Because the goal is not manipulation, it is appreciation. For example, let us say you give me this watch, or you're trying to sell me this watch. So you say it's very nice, and it will keep the time nicely. It's attractive, isn't it? Now, it is not required to know, nor am I interested to know, exactly how the watch is working, isn't it? How many of us, if I say how many of us have watches, everyone, but how many of us can repair a watch or build a watch? Very few, isn't it? So that's not required. That's not required. The goal of our life is not to build a watch. The watch is there, so now I'll do my business. Similarly, it is not required for everyone to know so many technical details about the earth. Some few people may be interested, but it is not the most important subject. Just like here in Mayapur, the simple life is so nice. I was thinking when I saw these little cottages out here in the Gurukula, this is more advanced than America. Because in America, they have so many factories, so much contamination of the air and water, and so many troubles in industry and labor. But here, a person simply, with whatever he grows in his own land, he can build a house. I was thinking this is very so nice. And the atmosphere is so nice, isn't it? It's a simple life. So, there is material science, vidya. The sciences are there, Ayurveda, for medicine, and the Astra Veda, Astra Gyan, some military science, or Dhanur Shastra, Dhanur Veda. Dhanur Veda and Ayurveda, all these technical subjects are there. So it's there. Political science is there, sociology, all these things are there. Manu Sanhita and so on, Manu Smriti, all these things are there. But the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is not simply to give you information to manipulate the world, but rather so you can understand ultimately what the world is, what the purpose of your life is. Therefore, a simple explanation is given. You understand? Just like if I want to tell you how to use, imagine a book which teaches us how to use a watch. It can be one page even, isn't it? You turn the dial like this, you push this button. Now imagine a book how to build a watch. It's much more elaborate. So the Bhagavad Gita is not to build the watch, it is simply how to use it properly. How to use this world properly. The simple gifts of God are there. Just like now we are speaking, for example. So we are simply sitting here speaking. This is our happiness. Isn't it? This is our happiness. That's it. We sit and speak about Krishna. We don't require so many. Of course, things are there. We can use them. Just like tape recorder or car. We can use these things for Krishna. But the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to tell you the ultimate purpose of your life. Otherwise, even if you have all these things, machines, if you don't know the purpose, you'll use them for destructive purpose. Just like in America, let us say there's a nuclear war, America and Russia, and hundreds of millions of people die a very horrible death. And there's so much destruction, earth is ruined. Won't people start thinking that it might have been better before? That perhaps living simply before, it was less trouble. People may come to this conclusion, isn't it? So, if you have spiritual knowledge, you will not be so obsessed with material toys. Just like down in America, there's a bumper sticker. Do you know what a bumper sticker is? You understand? On the cars, on the, as they parachoke, they say. That part of the car, adhesivo. Yeah, on the cars. Now in America, they have a very popular bumper sticker that says, whoever dies with the most toys wins. And this is the sum and substance of material philosophy. Chi muore
con il miglior giocattolo. Con il migliore giocattolo. È vincitore.
Whoever dies with more toys, with the most toys.
Toys means giocattolo.
Yeah.
Giocare.
Like children play with toys.
Yeah.
Whoever dies with the most toys wins.
What is the purpose?
That's capitalism. It's so. In other words, it's making fun of capitalism. That everyone is working so hard, but they're going to die anyway. And what are they working for? Just some toys, a house, car. So it's ridiculing the modern life. Whoever dies with the most toys wins.
Like they know actually what is the
Yes. Yes. Whoever dies with the most toys wins. ¿Quién se muere con más juguetes? Ganó. That's the idea. Es sarcástico. Ha decidido el parachoque de los carros. Es muy común. Burlándose del materialismo. ¿Quién se muere con más juguetes ganó? So then he asked about the other elements. Bhumirapvanalu vayu kang mano, the mind. Material mind and spiritual mind, both are there. Mind means sankalpa vikalpa, accepting, rejecting. So material mind, it will accept Maya and reject Krishna. And spiritual mind will accept Krishna and reject Maya. It's just the opposite.
So when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that this lower self should be controlled by the higher self, so how do we, what is the, please explain that, what is the lower self, what is the higher self?
Lower self means indriya kam, sense desire. Just like, for example, let us say a conditioned soul feels a desire to commit sin. Even, let us put it on a material level. We don't even have to talk so much about a spiritual. First, let's put it on the material level. Let's say there's a man. He becomes angry, and something in him wants to commit violence against another man. He committed murder. He wants to kill another man. Another part of him says, don't do it. Control yourself, be tolerant, don't kill another person. That's higher self and lower self.
And how is the consciousness connected to the higher self?
Consciousness has become infected. Just like, for example, your body, there may be infection. So the body, natural state, the body wants to be healthy, but there's some infection is there. Therefore, the infection is fighting against the body system, isn't it? Isn't it? The body has a system to fight disease, and the disease has a system to fight the body. So in the same way, consciousness has become infected by this disease. Kama, lova, krodha, matsara, moha, all these things. Lust, anger, greed, and so on. So, the soul wants to go back to Krishna. The pure soul wants to go back to Krishna. But the false ego is there, ahankara, this false pride, lust, and so on, is dragging us away from Krishna. So, this is the conflict. This is a conflict. Consciousness means Krishna consciousness. Just like if you say water. If you simply say water, don't qualify that term with any other word. You mean pure water. Technically, isn't it? Just like, let us say I take some contaminated water. So I say, oh, that's water. But technically it is contaminated water, because it is not only water, it is something else also. Isn't it? So if you use a word in an unqualified sense, it indicates that thing in its pure, isn't it? Pavitram vastu. The pure substance. So, if you say water, it means pure water. Similarly, if you just say consciousness, Chaitana, actually that means Krishna consciousness. Because what is consciousness? Consciousness means awareness. Now awareness requires an object. You must be aware of something. So therefore, if we want to know what, in other words, consciousness means that we should see clearly what actually is there. Objective. In other words, there should be a point of meeting between these subjective and objective aspects. Therefore, for example, in modern language, we say to someone, oh, that's just subjective. If we accuse someone, you've made a statement, but that is merely subjective, isn't it? We mean to say that it is not objective. It is only your opinion. And your opinion does not perfectly coincide with reality. You understand? There is something remarkably objective about his consciousness. Because, in a sense, he probably knows more about his finger than you do about your finger. Because he's been looking at it so long. And yet somehow we would be reluctant to say that this person is totally objective. You see? We would be reluctant to say that because although in one sense he's objective about a particular kind of perception, his perception is so limited and his sense of reality is so distorted and unbalanced that that's not really what we mean by objectivity. So by objectivity we mean not only that there should be accuracy in our perception, but there should be a certain completeness also. Isn't it? There should be accuracy, but there should also be completeness. So who is actually objective? Now, I think it would be very easy to demonstrate logically that it is not possible to be fully objective without being omniscient. ¿Entienden? Se puede demostrar por la lógica fácilmente que no se puede ser objetivo sin ser también omnisciente. Porque quien no es omnisciente, ¿cómo puede ser objetivo? Su visión es parcial.
You have to know everything.
Yes, unless you're omniscient, how can you say that you're objective? Just like, for example, let us say you look out your window at the earth and you come to the logical conclusion that the earth is flat. And you can prove it empirically. You say, look, I'll prove the earth is flat. I put a ball on the ground, it doesn't move, it just sits there. I proved the earth is flat. You understand? Così è possibile provare che la terra è flat. Pianta. La terra è pianta. Metto una bola, metto una balla nella terra e non si muove. Ho provato che la terra è piatta. No, flat. Isn't that empirical? Huh? Yeah. Yes. For example, first I can do an experiment to show that when you put a ball on an inclined surface, it will move. Then I put the ball in the earth. Well, it doesn't move. So I've proven the earth is flat. But now here the problem is that the earth is flat within a certain context. But with a broader vision, it turns out that all those flat pieces form a round surface. You understand? So therefore, my vision of the earth is not truly objective until I get the complete picture. You understand? The vision is not objective until I get the complete picture. So now, going back to my point, if someone is not omniscient, then there are many things they do not know. They do not have the complete picture. So in what sense are they objective? In other words, they're objective, maybe, or not at all. So actually the only person who's truly objective is God. How can anyone else be actually objective?
Brahma has a picture of the full universe, doesn't he?
Brahma? Yes, but sometimes he forgets something. So can you give any argument against that? If you are not omniscient, how can you be objective? I prove the earth is flat.
Imperfect. Omniscient. What is that word?
It knows everything. Omniscient. That knows everything. He knows everything. So, consciousness, mind, just like a child rejects medicine and accepts candy. But an adult in the same situation may reject the candy and take the medicine. Because he knows. It's not a difference of opinion. It is a question of knowledge. You understand? Actually, the medicine is required. The candy will kill the person. As they say in English, look before you leap. Look before you leap. Guarda prima di saltar. You understand? Huh? So, it's a question of knowledge. Just like Plato says, if you don't know what you are, how can you know what's good and bad? Just like, let us say, someone is completely ignorant of modern medicine. He comes to a room, he sees, here is one man, he has a knife, he's cutting another man. So he immediately comes and he grabs the man with the knife, throws him down on the ground, beats him and ties him up. He doesn't know this was a hospital, that was a doctor. He's saving the man. So, the point is, unless you have the complete understanding, what is the soul, what is God, how do you know what is good and bad? How do you know what is good and bad? The child, like a child, he thinks he knows what is good and bad, isn't it? A child thinks he knows. Therefore, a child will always instruct his parents. You should do this, you should not do that, you should give me this, isn't it? So without this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, what is your so-called morality? It's just manodharma. You understand? Manodharma. Manasa dharma. That's it. Mental platform. Manasa dharma. It is not the vastava vastu.
How to actually control the senses?
Krishna consciousness. You need to be busy. You're young, how old are you?
19.
See? At 19 years old, you have so much energy, so many ideas. You have to have service. Chant, hear. Prabhupada said you cannot stop the senses. You cannot stop the senses, but you have to engage them. You understand? Chanting, eating, dancing, reading books, service, working. So many things are there.
Krishna will help me.
Yes. Prabhupada said variety is the mother of enjoyment. So many services are there. Just like you cannot stop eating, but you must eat Krishna prasad.
Excuse me, but why do the devotees fall down? Like, they are already spiritually advanced, like they chant, they do the activity, but
They'll come back because Maya is also very advanced. So Narada Muni says, Tyaktva sadharmam charanam bhujang harer bhajana pakputa padita tu jadi tatra ko bha bhadrama bhura musha king ko vartato bhajatam swadharmata. He says, if someone gives up swadharma, his ordinary duties, charanam bhujang hare, hari charanam bhuj, bhajan karo. Hari charanam bhujer bhajan karo. And he's worshipping the lotus feet of Krishna. Then apakvota, even if he is apakva, he's not mature. Just like a fruit is not mature. He's not yet mature. Padaita dojadi, therefore he may fall down. So Narada Muni says, Jatra ko va bhadram. What is the abhadra? What is the bad? Jatra ko va bhadrama bhunamusike. Because he is a conditioned soul. He's a conditioned soul. He came to Krishna, and whatever service he has rendered, it is his permanent asset. It is his permanent benefit. It will never be lost. Nehavi kramanasusti pratyavayo navidyate. Swalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahatu vaya. Even a little bit, swalpam. Even a little bit of this dharma, Krishna consciousness. Trayate will save you from the greatest fear, mahavaya. Which is mahavaya hoite. You understand? Mahatu vaya.
So by saying Krishna, we can become happy. That is,
even if someone, of course, it's not nice if someone falls down, but we should see this person was drowning in the ocean of material life. Samsara sagar. Ocean of material existence. Now, somehow or other he came to Krishna, he's got an eternal benefit in his spiritual bank account. And even if he had some difficulty, he'll come back. As Lord Krishna explains, that even those who are not, just like Arjuna asked this question, Ayati, one who could not become perfect. Ayati sadayopeta yoga hoite chalita manasa. Do you understand? Huh? You don't understand?
I don't understand Sanskrit.
Oh. Anyway, Ayati sadayopeto yoga chalita manasa. His mind was deviated from his Krishna consciousness. Aprapya. He could not get the perfection. So Arjuna asked, Kangating Krishna gachati. What is his goal? What happens to him? What happens to him? So Krishna explains that Nahi kalyana krit kasya durgating tata gachati. Because he was kalyanakrit, because he was engaged in Krishna consciousness, therefore there is no loss for him. Prapya punya kritang lokan usitva sastati sama suchinang simatang gehe yoga prasto vijayate. In his next, there's a good chance he will come back in this life. Just like we see practically. So many devotees, they have some difficulty, but they come back. We know this. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. Those who are sincere, they come back. Isn't it? Just like a child is growing up. There may be a little difficulty with his family, so he may go away, but then he comes back. Isn't it? Practically. So, they're coming back. Those who are sincere actually come back. And even if in this life, someone does not come back because he's actually very fallen, then Krishna says, either perhaps he will go to the heavenly planets where he'll enjoy like anything. Then he'll take birth in the family of Suchi who? You understand? Suchinang simatang gehe yoga prasto vijayate. He'll take birth in a very favorable family, either wealthy family or pious family, or adava yoginam eva kule bhavati jivatang tadeva hi durlabhataram loke janma jaridrisham. Or he'll take birth in a family of bhakti yogi. Krishna says such a birth is durlabha, very, very rare, sudurlabha. Such a janma, such a birth. So Krishna will take care of him. There's no loss. If you even once try to surrender to Krishna, he'll take charge of you. If you once sincerely say to Krishna, I surrender to you, please take care of me, actually he will take care. Even if there's some difficulty, he will bring you back. That's clearly explained. Otherwise, Narada Muni says, if you take up material service, even if you do it perfectly, what is the benefit? It's all finished at the time of death. The material service, even if you do it perfectly, is useless. And what to speak if you don't do it perfectly, is even more useless. There's useless and more useless.
Eternally related to Krishna. Eternally related to Krishna.
Yes.
And each and every individual person has his complete individuality in that. And the very purpose of Krishna consciousness is to unite our consciousness with Krishna. Now, what does it mean when Krishna says that I am intelligence of intelligence?
That means if you have good intelligence, that's Krishna's mercy. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, 15th verse, Vedaischa sarvar ahamiva vedyo. Now he says, Sarvasya chaham hri sangnivishto. Sarvasya, for everyone. Sarvasya cha, aham, I am. Hridi, in the heart, sannivishto. I'm in the heart of everyone. Mata, from me. Mata, smriti, jnana, apohanam cha. From me come memory, smaran, and jnana, and forgetting, apoham. So if you have good intelligence, good brain, that is not your own Shakti, independent. We are not swatantra. You understand? We are not independent. Every one of us is paratantra. And that para is Krishna. We are all dependent.